Welcome to the Endgame podcast, where I bet you don't know what you don't know. I'm Dr. Ryan Wakeham, your host, and I'm here to talk to you today about finding keys to success as you enter into the new year. I'm going to step you through ways in which I found success, and then hopefully impart upon you ways that you can find success. And maybe part of that will include some sort of coaching. So this is our second podcast. Our inaugural podcast with Dr. Sean Dill is also now live. So please don't forget to subscribe and check us out. Hopefully we can give you some wisdom and knowledge that you can take towards your end game of your desires. So welcome to the podcast. Again, I'm Dr. Ryan Wakeham, successful entrepreneur and your end game coach. And once more, we'll be talking about the keys to success and how you find those. So as I look back at my journey, why I'm here today, trying to reach out and coach others and be a mentor for others, I learned entrepreneurship and business through, really the school of hard knocks. I was a med student and a resident. I was in medical school, undergrad in biology and chemistry, never took a single business course in my life. However, realized through, having some family members, my father, my grandfather were successful entrepreneurs themselves. So a little bit of just osmosis being around that in the family really showed me that there was an alternative route to being an employee to someone else. There was an alternative route to the daily grind, Monday through Friday, clock in, clock out. And I knew that came with sacrifices. I knew that would come with its own set of challenges. I didn't know, if you've heard me talk before or listen to some others, you'll hear this concept of you don't know what you don't know. And man, I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. I knew there would be struggles and hurdles and some difficulties along the way, but to be where we are today and having learned what I've learned, looking back, I clearly didn't know what I didn't know. I knew that I didn't want to work for others. I knew that I wanted to be kind of pave my own way, but then how I came about that is really part of the story. So as I think about how I got here today, again, School of Hard Knocks, you've heard me talk about asymmetric risk. So I had finished medical school, started residency, and realized early on in my residency as a psychiatrist that there was a huge need for continued services that weren't affiliated with the hospital system. And so I approached the hospital system and said, here's a kind of a rough sketch on a business plan, from not having ever done schooling. And they turned me away. They decided that wasn't the path they wanted to take. And however, I knew it was the path I wanted to take. So I actually convinced two of my co-residents to join me. And we started our first outpatient, practice while being in residency. So as you think about hedging your bets and asymmetric risk, I was a resident. I was going to finish residency. I had that career path. I could work for a hospital system or someone else if I had to, but being able to start my own practice while, being in training and having that career path over here really allowed me to, again, take risks, reach a little bit further or, stretch outside my comfort zone where I might not have been able to do that had it been different set of circumstances. So the ability to leverage asymmetric risk, the ability to understand that I didn't want to necessarily just work for someone else, and that drive and motivation, despite never having a day of business training, is really how I embarked on the path to where I am today. And again, I learned through the School of Hard Knocks. At one point, I was the receptionist, the drug screener, the therapist, the psychiatrist, the, central intake, the biller, the coder, and everything in between. So I've, literally had done every piece of the business myself. And through learning that myself, through understanding what a good job looked like, through understanding what the hurdles were for our circumstance, that really trained me to be better at everything, right? I truly had to understand the whole business to be able to better manage the business. And so fast forward a number of years, we grew that to 6 large outpatient group practices. And, if you've heard me speak, you've heard me talk about how we then exited through a private equity group. And what brought me to be the end game coach really was that final step in that career path, which being in the middle of due diligence with a private equity group and having thought I knew really everything I needed to know, and understanding that I didn't know what I didn't know once again, and that I didn't know who to reach out to in the setting of I'm a owner operator, I'm in the process of diligence with a private equity group. Who do I reach out to for help in this moment in time? There aren't a lot of people that have done that. Certainly aren't a lot of business coaches or mentors who understand that. And that's where I found I could be helpful to those in the future, having paid a lot of dummy taxes and having learned a lot of things along the way. So, that's really how I got here today and why I'm here today. I'm profoundly interested in the mind as a psychiatrist and in behavior. And frankly, there's so much about being a successful entrepreneur that harkens back to where you are from a mindset perspective, and the behaviors in which you either choose to act upon or choose to manage around as you look towards the future of your own successes. So again, just the pairing of my background, my training as a psychiatrist and a physician, paired with the asymmetric risk and leveraging that along the way, and then finally coupling that with my experience on a private equity exit and kind of learning all along the way the do's and don'ts, paying the dummy taxes, and coming out ahead. As we know, the definition of an entrepreneur is someone who can survive their mistakes. And by leveraging this concept of asymmetric risk and overcoming and having the strong mindset, was able to get to where I am to hopefully help you. Other areas I think about when I think about keys to success. So those are just a couple of pieces about why I'm here telling you about keys to success. But as we think about what are truly the keys to someone's success, and I would argue that there's a lot of nuance there, kind of business operation to business operation or business type to business type, but there are a lot of consistencies across what makes a successful business and what the keys are to that success. So as I mentioned, one of mine, and I would say one of yours certainly should be this idea of mindset. I'm a little bit biased here as a psychiatrist, but I would tell you that if you don't wake up every day with the right mindset or the right ability to get yourself in the right mindset, the challenges that will come your way, as you already probably know, if you're a small business owner, can become extremely overwhelming. And so you truly have to have incredible mindset to be able to overcome the day-to-day challenges of being an owner operator, to then get to a point where someone like a private equity group or a venture capital group or a family fund may have interest in you. And I would say that one of the keys to my success, beyond just this idea of mindset, was really this idea of how you can scale without without necessarily financial assistance, and do it in a way where you can preserve culture. You've heard me talk about it before, but famously it's said that culture will eat strategy for breakfast, and no truer words have been spoken. If you can truly surround yourself with the right people under the right ecosystem or environment of the right culture, you can grow exponentially and do that through your own financial means. Because when you're really good at something and people feel that, when it's genuine and patients feel it or your customers feel it, they will come back for more and you will be ultimately successful. So environment and culture is critically important to being successful, and clearly one of my keys to success, having learned it through residency and training as a psychiatrist. Journaling is another way to be ultimately successful. I've always been told a wish is just a wish or a dream unless you put it down on paper and really have a plan towards it. So if you have these, extremely aspirational dreams and wishes and goals and desires, and you don't ever put anything down or you don't put a plan against it, the chances of those becoming actual goals that are achievable are almost zero. So if you have a goal, it is just a dream until you put it on paper and you put a plan against it. So journaling is critically important. Journaling is also a really good way to remember your past. Again, if you're a small business owner or you've been in operations, run a business before, you'll know that things come at you all different directions all the time. And if you don't document best practices, if you don't document lessons learned, if you don't reflect back and think about what could have been better, then you will constantly be making original mistakes, and that will completely cripple you from your ability to grow and scale. Frankly, it'll cripple your culture and communication, and it'll create an environment both economically and culturally that's not sustainable. So journaling, writing down, putting goals against, best practice, lessons learned, all these things are critically important so that you don't repeat the past so that you can be better into the future. So journaling, again, for me has always been a critically important piece of success. And frankly, putting it on paper makes it more real. We know that from a behavioral perspective, again, harkening back to my training, our goal here is to be maniacally focused on a small handful of big goals that you might need to make incremental steps toward along the way. But if you don't write it down, it's just a hope and a dream, and you likely will never get there. Another critically important thing as we just kind of turn into the new year. So as we think about keys to success, some of that actually does rely on time of year, or frankly, time in your career. As we think about this concept of you don't know what you don't know, and the idea of asymmetric risk, individuals are far more likely to take risk earlier in their career path than they are later. And they might be more likely to take a risk earlier in the year than they are later in the year. As you get towards the end of the year with tax planning and wrapping up business operations and the holidays, you're not as likely to pivot, find an inflection point and change, pivot on a certain goal as you get close to the end of the year. Same with close to the end of your career. So as you think about leveraging asymmetric risk and or when you can be a little bit more cavalier or a little bit more intentional about pivoting and change, you might want to consider doing that early in the year. This being, January as we're filming this, new year, new me, this concept is out there. Often new year, new me is some sort of vanity. I'm going to diet. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to, I'm going to take more vacations. New year, new me can very much apply to mindset and absolutely should apply to journaling, to goal setting, and to how you're going to get there. There's no better time and as you turn into this new year, especially in the middle of this recession, thinking about where your areas of opportunity can be and where you can get maniacally focused and put attention on a goal and an endpoint and put that on paper with a plan. There's no better time for new year, new me than right now for your business too. The other kind of more tactical keys to success, as I think through, my past and some others that I've worked with and or kind of grown alongside with, there's a couple of other just super tactical things that you should consider doing as keys to success. And, first of all, you should probably define success. So not everyone wants an end game. Not everyone, is looking for some sort of private equity exit or venture capital startup funding. So first and foremost, as you think about journaling and writing down your goals, think about how do you define success, and probably ought to think about that from a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. How do you define success in your business, but also how do you define success personally? So everything we talk about can be both personal and professional. So what does success look like for your family or for you personally? But from a business perspective, just tactical things. making sure, as I mentioned before, only make original mistakes. You don't need to be repeating the past. And part of that, in terms of putting a plan against it, is in procedures and standing operating procedures or standard operating procedures. So again, we don't need to keep, not every decision needs to be unique. Not every decision needs to be a new decision to be made. And however, if you don't have those standards in place, those policies in place that your staff, employees, patients can see and understand, then everything will be a one-off decision. And as I said earlier, to be an owner operator, to be providing care or taking excellent customer service care of someone, and then also have to be making key decisions every minute of every day, will completely stunt your ability to grow your business, no matter what industry that's in. So putting in place policies and procedures and SOPs, making those or training to those from a staffing perspective, but also it's okay to make some of that public to your audience as well. When I think about sports and athletes, and there's rules to the game. There are truly agreements in place in any sport. There's certain rules that everyone abides by. There's even referees to call it out. If we don't do the exact same thing in our personal and professional lives, we'll find ourselves outside the boundaries. And oftentimes that leads to either stunting of growth or failure. So ensuring that we have policies and procedures, we have agreements in place, both in terms of how we're going to treat one another from a culture and communication perspective, but also how we're going to treat our patients and what they can expect from us and what we can expect from them. Agreements are critically important as the rules of the game, rules of the road, as we think about running our business. The other thing I would say is critically important as a small business owner is you don't have to be a CFO, you don't have to be a controller, but you do have to understand your numbers. A business can't be a business if it's not making money. And so if you're constantly losing money year after year and you're not either A, understanding that, or B, have a path, at least like some sort of controlled chaos path to profitability, then you probably need to take a step back and think about, what your business is doing and what you're doing for your business. Another, I'd say, just side note there would be, as you think about running your business, and especially if it's your business, you also need to think about how you're going to pay yourself, because there's nothing more defeating than putting in 80-hour work weeks, not adequately paying yourself for doing so, because water finds its level and that money will disappear one way or another, especially early on in startup. So I never advise to go raise money to pay yourself more. I never advise to pay yourself before you can pay yourself. But the second you can start budgeting to pay yourself, you need to do that. And as you stick with your plans and your goals and you follow that path, you need to be paid accordingly along the way. So keeping in mind, this whole concept of yourself, like caring for yourself, goes back to mindset and health set, which is, if you're on a plane and they tell you, if you've ever been on a plane, you listen to them going through the pre-takeoff routine. One of the most important concepts, I think, that we don't think about often enough, and not in a narcissistic way, but if the oxygen mask drops, you have to put your own oxygen on first before you help someone else. And the same is true in your own business, which is you have to care for yourself, health set, mindset, personally, professionally, in order for you to be a leader, for you to be a manager, for you to be a provider, for you to be all the things you need to be for your employees, your patrons, and the business. You have to care for yourself, right? So mindset's critically important. Health set is critically important. If you've heard me talk about health set, you've heard me talk about motion drives emotion, and that you get out of your body what you put into it. And quality sleep is very important too. We sleep a third of our lives away, or we should be sleeping a third of our lives away. And if you're not, that's something you need to strongly consider investing in so you can be re-energized and be able to perform again for your business, for your team, for your patrons. So in closing, there's a number of keys to success I've discussed today. Just to go over those at high level. One, you've heard me talk about asymmetric risk. Two, you've heard me talk about you don't know what you don't know. And the only way you will know is to get around someone who does. And that could be coaching, that could be mentoring. There's all sorts of programs, business training programs out there. But if you're not leveraging someone else's mistakes, you're going to make plenty of your own. And the definition of an entrepreneur is someone who can survive those mistakes, and not everyone can survive. Thinking about journaling, again, a goal is just a dream if it's not on paper with a plan against it. Some of the key plans I talked about would be policies and procedures, SOPs, and understanding your business numbers and understand the impact of your business numbers on your own pay. And finally, most importantly, new year, new me. Understand that although health set out of your body, what you put into it, motion drives emotion is important. Number one is mindset. If you don't have your own mindset where it needs to be, you can't expect anyone else's to be where you want it to be. I'm Dr. Ryan Wakeham, a successful entrepreneur and your end game coach. I want to thank you for listening to our second podcast here at the End Game Coach podcast. And I just want to impart upon you that I'm here to teach you how to exist today so that you can expand tomorrow and create the ultimate end game of your wildest dreams. Please subscribe, like, 5 stars, anything you can do so that we can help reach more people to reach more people. Talk to you soon.